The €2.5 billion in cuts and increases in tax announced in yesterday's budget have to be seen as a further tier built on the platform of savage austerity that has been put in place in this country over the last 5 years. Budget 2014 is therefore a further twist of the austerity knife, which is already buried deep in the gut of the Irish working class, low and middle income workers, pensioners, the unemployed and the youth. Now, the government of Fianna Fáil and the Greens launched an economic war of attrition against the Irish people at the diktat of the Troika to salvage the speculator and the gambling bondholder and the European financial market system from their disastrous foray into the Irish property bubble. Fine Gael and Labour have continued that war for the last 2.5 years. And then yesterday, like mercenaries on the battlefield, they mugged the dazed survivors of their austerity war for what little they had left. The pensioners, the youth, and even young pregnant women. Over the last week, we have been subjected to an Orwellian tide of propaganda from government and sections of the billionaire-owned media that the corner has been turned with the economy, that the austerity agenda has worked, that we are now on the cusp of the transformation of this island into a land flowing with milk and honey for our people. This is a cruel fiction. Coming towards the end of the year, when the economy scrapes along the bottom at barely 0.2% of growth, where 1,000 a week of the young and other workers are leaving the country, where over 400,000 are unemployed or underemployed. And the 2.5 billion extra will be a further drag on an already sick domestic economy. Now, the savaging the maternity allowance at a time of great stress for young women is mean in the extreme. The snatching of the telephone allowance from the elderly is absolutely shameful and cruel and heartless, is threatening to take the medical cards from those over 70 in their tens of thousands. The pauperisation of the young unemployed with the savage cut to their job seekers' allowance is an economic body blow to them. But to attempt to camouflage this cut as an employment-friendly measure insults our intelligence. The attacks on the elderly and the attacks on the young reflect the brutality of the ongoing austerity agenda promoted by this Fine Gael government. Die off is the callous message to the elderly. You are an inconvenience. Get out of the country is the callous message to the youth. We have no place for you here because our policies are failing. Now, for the last 2.5 years, the Minister for Social Protection, Deputy Burton, has trailed her major unhappiness around the country's media at having the elderly, the unemployed and the poor landed at her feet. She should have been the Minister for Finance or the Minister for Public Expenditure, announcing the macro cuts rather than being forced to look her victims in the eye as she snatches a significant portion of the maternity allowance, snatches the telephone allowance from the elderly, or savages the job seekers' allowance for the young. She wanted to carry out the macro cuts, not be seen to be carrying out the savagery that they involved, although of course she signed up for all of that 2.5 years ago. Now, for 2.5 years, the Minister for Social Protection through endless briefing, with selected journalists, have tried to portray herself as a doughty Joan of Arc, battling against those bad men in the cabinet who would cut her budget and make her look bad, and implement those very cuts that she signed up for. Today, this hapless minister, far from being a Joan of Arc, Deputy Burton stands in the same gallery of political rogues as children's milk snatcher Margaret Thatcher, as she puts the bondholder before the pensioner, and the banker and the financial market system before the youth of our country. Deputy Burton has used the working class of Dublin West to launch her political career over the last 21 years, and then betrays them most callously to continue that career. It is particularly shameful that in this 100th anniversary of the 1913 lockout, that the Labour Party should support the abomination of austerity and this budget, a party that was created from the struggles and the sacrifices of working class people for justice against the bosses, and where the Labour Party now lines up with the bosses' system, with capitalism, against the workers that they were supposed to represent. Labour, of course, is now a party of the right, lock, stock and barrel. Any budget based on continuing with the policy of bailing out banks and bondholders and the paying of odious debt can only result in the continuation of savage austerity. Within the straitjacket of this system, it is simply not possible to meet the needs of our people. Yes, a radical socialist alternative is possible, that I stand for, but that would mean putting the interests of the majority first and bringing the banks and the resources that are there, the major resources, into public ownership and democratic control. Even allowing for the fact, the right-wing nature of this government. The Socialist Party budget statement points out that based on the household wealth in this country, at 1% wealth tax on the very top 1% would yield 583 million, or an emergency 5% tax on them would yield 2.9 billion euro. Every 1% of a corporation tax increase would yield 525. Repudiation of the odious debt forced on the Irish people would yield many billions. On that basis, massive job creation programmes with public investment in infrastructure and so forth could have been created and begin the process of rebooting and remaking this broken economy. Working class people, workers and young people and elderly people have to stand and fight now. Unfortunately, the trade union leadership have been in hiding for the last 5 years, who should be giving a lead. Working class people have to organise and fight back against this government so that the disastrous policies of austerity are changed. Mar focal scoid alas ceann cóla, I mushéad na bliana seo, the bliana gavílis a cehadiag, is égor nua amachas amach, a ha dhéanamh ar gnálocht ebre in the tíde, gmórmhór daoine éasta agus daoine óga. Agus únsaí nua fiacfra a ha geistan sa, leis na policy déine a fá a chur le 5 bliana inis. Policy a churic bhaim bhatha le loch speculéireachta, loch na manaí agus loch na bancéirí móra, agus bhatha le córas na margadaí airgeadais. Tá sé náideach fé mar a dhírig an réaltas seo daoine éasta mar hampla le garan lúntais telefón leis na mílte cártaí laios a chur ar ceall daoine éasta, agus is uafásach agus is scanalach an únsaí daoine óga. Gan obair de bhar na gcéirt céimena agus go bhfuilinn siad ag ísliú go mór an lúntas de cúrdaitheoirí ebre. Is córa é seo nach bhfuil laios be, nach bhfuil freagra be ag an réaltas seo feiban na móra ach na méachta na tíre seo de bhar mar a saléir ins na polasa a hácur chun cín. Da bhrí sin tá mallart bunúsa chuig tastáil. I dteos go gurfií an severas a háin a inistú bhatha le trámlach nó líne. Caithfid daoine óga, caithfid go lucht debre, caithfid daoine éasta seasamhanis agus trigenaig na polasa seo, trigenaig in déine chun mallart amachchas amach, bunúsa chur I bhaim, chun an tír seo agus acnamíoch na tíide agus muinte na tíide a chur ar ais ar a cosa.
Deputy Higgins.